If you don't embrace marketing and selling, then nobody's going to know about your gift. And I think that's the biggest crime. And I would love it that the artists of the world actually began to embrace this more out of an obligation to share your gift with the world.
What's up, guys? We have a chiropractor here today. I'm very. I never thought that I have a chiropractor as one of our guests, but we have a guy that is disrupting a space. I think that's the easiest way to start the episode. In a space like that, personal brand is probably not something that people focus on, and you have taken it to a whole other level. Before you came, me and Jeff actually, we were Googling in your space and we didn't find anything else. So bless you, you found some white space and you're obviously crushing it. So welcome to the show, Shawn Dill, my man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Welcome. We actually might need some chiropractic stuff.
That's right.
These chairs are hard to sit in. So
I've actually only done a chiropractor one time. So
No kidding. What about you, Jeff?
I actually had to go for a full 2 months.
Okay.
Because I really injured my neck from working. I have a whole new setup right now because of a chiropractor. I have a standing laptop thing. I have everything. And it's all optimized now, but
standing desk has been absolutely amazing for me. So to give everybody some context, Shawn has grown an empire in the chiropractor space, and he also has something called the Black Diamond Club, which is basically a group for different service providers to help them with all things business. So just to set some context, and I want to start in the beginning. So let's start. Growing up, what were you like as a kid? Your family? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was. My father's in the military, so people always ask me, "Where are you from?" And so I don't really have a good answer. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri. We moved when I was 1 year old to Okinawa, Japan. So I had little formative years there up until I was 6. Interesting side note: I love the Pittsburgh Steelers. If people ask me, so who do you follow? Because I was born in '71. So in the 70s, during that dynasty run, and only one game every Sunday. And so because the Steelers were dominating and you're in Japan, you only got the Steelers. So I kind of figured basically every Sunday we watched the Steelers play somebody. And so that became my team there. We moved to North Carolina for a stint, then Indiana, and then I went to chiropractic college in Missouri. And I think probably moving around it conditioned me. It opened my mind to being mobile. When I graduated, I moved to Costa Rica, practiced there for 8 years, then moved to California, and now we're in Indianapolis.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into being a child of a guy in the military. What are some key things you learned from that?
I think part of it is, if for anybody that moves a lot, it doesn't matter if you're in the military or not, but if you're moving a lot, part of it, I think, is it stimulates creativity. Because it's hard to make and keep friends when you're, super young. When you're 5 and 6 years old, and especially at that time, you're not connected by Facebook, social media. You're not staying in touch with them. And so you come in, you make your friends, and then you move. And if you have kids or you've ever moved, parents, toil over this, right? You have to move your kids away from their friends, and no kid ever wants to move. It's the end of the world, right?
You're building momentum with friends, and then you're leaving. You got to start again.
So of course what happens is you have imaginary friends, right? you have to get creative, and you do a lot of things creatively by yourself. Star Wars, which super popular now. That was popular back at that time. You play with action figures.
Yeah, I mean, to go on your point, Steven Spielberg and a bunch of other directors and creatives actually moved a lot as a kid, and that's why they're so creative now. They had a story tell and create stories by themselves. So that's Star Wars, George Lucas.
Absolutely. And I think that's critical in the formation, and only child. So, not having, I was by myself a lot. And that's not a negative. I guess people can see it as a negative, but I see it super positive because it really did stimulate that creativity world. Having parents that also were super supportive, even I'll say even business, when we're hiring people, and I always look for people that have parents that always told them they could do whatever they want, right? Because if you have that sort of that degree of, it's what we call rejection armor, right? You were told as a kid you could do whatever you want. So also being young, and I think maybe compensating to some degree, but moving around a lot, parents were always telling me, you could do whatever you want. You could be whatever you want. Don't worry about it. Yeah, we're moving. don't worry about it. You could do whatever you want. You can overcome. Played sports. Interestingly, I was super into soccer, so played
Me
a lot
too.
of soccer.
Let's go, baby.
Watch a ton of. Living in Costa Rica, phenomenal to watch some soccer there. And then I was super into music, which of course those two things. And so that was sort of what it looked like being young. And another thing that I always look for myself in hiring somebody is somebody that has a track record of winning early. And so, being young, my mom was an artist, not a professional artist like Jeb, but like she taught art in school. And so always sort of encouraged me to develop that side. And for me, more music on the music side, super into jazz, but always excelled, right? And that made it, that's what makes it easy to make friends. If you can play soccer, if you can play music, then it's easier to plug in than if you're just walking up and you're like, hey, you guys want to talk, right? If you're engaging into something, that allows you to plug in. So always looking for those angles. And and we were talking a little bit, pre-recording here, that I think also taught me how to be collaborative, right? So now in business, understanding how to collaborate with people. People bring different things to the table, and people are all people at the end of the day too. And everybody has a need. I think that partly too, you see a lot of people that you might look at them and they dress cool and they act cool, but you don't realize that maybe they're looking for a friend, right? Like, when you're in school, you have your friends, or when you're in business, you have your group of people that you interact with. And there's other people that are maybe on the come up that have a lot to offer and that are looking to connect. And if they know how to connect, then you should invite them in. And I think part of that too, like, you have to have been in that situation where you were trying to connect to understand that. Because if you are always with the cool people, if you're always in the in crowd, you might not be as inviting, right? To allow people to come. I know what it feels like to walk into a
Both
situation and be brand new, right?
I said on the last episode, you don't know how much it hurts getting punched in the face until you get punched in the face.
Right.
And another thing too is I firmly believe in winners win and losers lose, and you have to avoid the people that are unlucky, the people that are losers, and just make sure you're taking advice from the right people. Now, we talked off camera a bit about it. I can tell you're a lifelong learner immediately. Obviously, you're a teacher as well. Were you always like that?
Yeah, I love to read. Man, I love to get around. Somebody just asked me earlier today, do I think that by investing in relationships and in learning that it elevates or increases the value of the service that I provide? And my answer to that was, I think that every day I wake up increases the value of the service I provide, because I'm always learning. I mean, from having dinner at a restaurant, like, how much can you learn about service and delivery and timing,
Communication, everything.
right?
Yeah. All
of those upsells and cross-sell, all of the stuff that you can learn at any given moment. I think we choose whether or not we're learning or not, right?
Yeah.
You could go to a basketball game and learn about, delivery and processing and moving people. You can learn in any given situation. And I love that. And what I really love is learning from things that are not in my field, right? That's partly like kind
Jay
of why
Abraham
I'm here,
101 right there, baby. We're going to get into Jay. That's so true.
Right? Yeah.
I got to stop you for a second. I want to get into it like right now. I firmly believe that entrepreneurs are born, they're not made. And for me, you are just speaking like a true entrepreneur. It's everywhere I go, I'm just looking, what can I learn? Who can I talk? What little things can I pick up? Do you think entrepreneurs are born or made? Because I don't think they can be made. I think salespeople can be made, but I think entrepreneurs, that innate, like, I need to get a little something out of everything. That's what I think.
Yeah, what an interesting concept. And I guess it's almost like winners. I think I heard you say, like, winners know winners. Was that you that said that, right?
I always say that.
So I mean, maybe that's kind of like entrepreneurs, right? Like, entrepreneurs know other entrepreneurs. Like, you get around people and you're like, because I don't know. That's a great question. Can they be made? Because I've never tried to make one, right? I don't know. I guess I would, if you were to put it this way. Shawn, would you want to take someone who you do not consider an entrepreneur and try to make them an entrepreneur? I would say no. So I guess I would agree that you can't really make them.
The only thing I have problem with your definition is I think entrepreneurs are just obsessively curious.
Yes.
Because I'm not his definition of an entrepreneur, but like when you say obsessively curious and you brought up like always trying to learn, I'm an entrepreneur in that aspect. But
you're a new age entrepreneur. You're a hybrid, and
but I think
this guy 3 years ago wasn't even into business. God bless you, Gary Vee. God bless you.
Yeah.
Wasn't even into business, and now he takes, very seriously educating himself.
Well, and that's another massive passion of mine. I mean, and hopefully we could dive into this, but I think that, in the creative space, the greatest artists, the greatest musicians are unknown. They're off somewhere, producing amazing art, producing amazing, creative pieces, but nobody knows them because they don't embrace the business side. And if you don't embrace marketing and selling, then nobody's going to know about your gift. And I think that's the biggest crime. I mean, for being, starting with this idea of the creative side of me, and that goes, I believe this about clinicians in the healthcare space. I believe that the greatest healers in the world, nobody knows about them. Because the people that we do know about, they just knew how to market. They got on TV. You were on Oprah, and all of a sudden you became an authority. That doesn't mean you have a track record for producing results, right? And so if you meet the right people and your piece gets on social media, then all of a sudden people recognize you. And I would love it that the artists of the world actually began to embrace this more out of an obligation to share your gift with the world. Like,
people are wasting their life. They don't have the proper distribution. You can have the greatest content, the greatest product. And with Jeff, he's obviously fully embraced it. And when the company started, Jeff was doing all of the pieces. And we're not a marketplace, we're a brand, but we've slowly brought in this talent. And it's personally like really fulfilling to me that I have guys that, every month they're getting, we're paying their rent every single month. And we're giving them structure in their lives for business.
And they're doing what they love and what they're good at, right?
Jeff doesn't work without me. I don't work without Jeff. I mean, if I didn't have any art, this would be a failure. If he didn't have any business acumen, this would be failure. So it goes both ways. You really touched on, again, it's a key buzzword with Jay Abraham, being an authority in the space. I want to keep going down your path to how you got to where you are today. So you finished school. You said you were in Costa Rica. And then what was next? Did you get a practice?
So I graduated in 1995. Time-wise, very important. So that was a time when healthcare was changing. And so there was the advent of managed healthcare. So insurance, reimbursements were changing. It was, frankly, a very confusing time to be a healthcare provider. People didn't know what the reimbursements were going to be, how it was going to work. And I was 24 years old. And, if you're listening to the podcast and you're 24 years old, I get it. When I was 24, I knew everything. So I was like, I'm going to go to Costa Rica. One problem, I didn't speak any Spanish. And so I'm in a country where I don't even speak the language, and I'm trying to tell them about this thing, chiropractic, that they've never heard of. It was an utter disaster for the first year. And I think, though, that that's super important because I learned the importance of communication, And maybe it's that sort of arrogant, dumb gringo, like, everybody should speak English, and they don't. And then I massively struggled. At the end of my first year, I seriously considered coming back to the United States. I was like, maybe I should just learn insurance and figure this out.
And for context, there was complete white space, so no one else was doing this in Costa Rica.
There was like 3 people that lived out on the beach, but and basically, nobody else was doing.
That you were probably better than, but you didn't have the communication skills.
Well, they just catered to Americans too. They weren't doing anything significant. It was brand new in Costa Rica. In fact, I had the one of my key pieces of my resume is that I wrote the law that regulates chiropractic in the country of Costa Rica. I think it was like 25 when I wrote that, and then went through the process.
That's a nice little flex, Shawn. He's writing laws. this guy's a lawmaker over here. First chiropractor, first lawmaker.
So yes, there wasn't anything there. But I had to learn how to communicate. And the way that I was forced to do that was I was invited on a television show. Basically what would amount to like the Today Show. And here's what I did is I thought, okay, so again, my Spanish is terrible. So I sat down with somebody. I said, so there's probably like some key questions they're going to ask. First of all, obviously they're going to ask me, what is chiropractic? So let's determine the answer. Let's get it in Spanish and I will memorize that. They'll probably ask me, what kinds of things can chiropractic help? So I had these no-brainer questions that they would ask me, and I knew how to answer them in Spanish. And I get on the show, and the very first question they said to me, they said, hey, Shawn, you look a little bit Asian. So what is the difference between chiropractic and acupuncture? And I was like, oh. And so I just answered the answers that I had memorized. It didn't matter what question and so the answers and the questions were mismatched completely, but that was like the only thing I could say. And they were looking at me. Imagine you're asking me questions.
And you're just giving whatever answers you want.
I'm talking about basketball or cars, and you're like, what is wrong with you? And then I got off the show and I thought, that's it. I'm done, right? Because this is a national television show. This is it. My career's over in Costa Rica. And then about a month later, they called me back. And I think this is super important too. This is super formative for me. when I was leaving Costa Rica, I ended up being invited on that show as a regular. It was on there monthly. And when I was leaving, I asked the host, I was like, do you remember my first time on? And she was like, you were terrible. I said, well, why did you have me back? And she said, because I looked in your eyes when I was interviewing you and I knew you had something important to say. And she said, when you left that set, I told the producers, get him back. And they thought, what? And she said, get him back until he gets it right. He has something transformative to share. It's just not coming out, right? That's where, too, I learned. Like, my learning Spanish, basically my tip, if you want to learn a second language, and I know there's a lot of these programs, I read the newspaper from cover to cover every day. Most newspapers are written at a third grade level. And you kind of know what's going on, right? You're going to see an article in any country. You're going to read an article probably about the Lakers, and you know they're talking about basketball and LeBron, and so you could piece it together.
Cesta, LeBron James.
Yeah, you get it together, right? You start to figure it out. That's how I learned Spanish. But after I left there, I was so embarrassed, but I was so inspired to learn. I was like, I have to learn how to communicate effectively. And and gosh, what I would say, what tremendous asset to have is to be able to speak another language as well, right?
I completely agree, and I speak 0 languages.
Yeah.
Outside,
0 languages.
outside of English. You want to hear something crazy? I was just telling someone last night, my grandma was the co-founder of ESL, English is a second language. She's 97. She speaks everyone in my family speaks multiple languages.
Wow.
And I have shitty English. Yeah, my mom's a speech pathologist.
And he's very terrible communication.
Terrible
skills.
communication, terrible context. Very good at marketing sales, though. What's up, Jeff? What up? Okay, all right, let's keep going. Okay, so Costa Rica, what's next?
Come back. I have 2 daughters. Today they are 22 and 20. So they were at grade school age, and to come back to put them into a normal school. We were basically.
Are you in Indiana right now?
Yeah, in Indiana now.
Why? Okay, let's stop that for a second. Why'd you pick Indiana?
Well,
Because that's a fucking random one.
I was in Indiana during my high school years, but it's such a for me it's a great place. It's
Sell
right in the
everybody right
middle.
now. Why do you?
I went to IU
Oh,
for
why?
2 years. So
that's where I went
yeah.
for 2 years. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that
Mark
is a
Cuban.
great school. Yeah.
Mark Cuban likes Indiana too.
What's it like though? It's
Super-
It's
look.
suburby, right?
Yeah, where we live is suburby, and so before Indiana, we lived in the Bay Area, and Bay Area is great,
that is a
right?
huge difference.
Cost of
Huge.
living, low
Yeah.
real estate, taxes.
I think I make money. I'm richer every day just for waking up in Indiana and not in San Francisco,
That's true,
right? Like
yeah.
I'm just
There's
like,
a sound
wow,
clip
this
for
is
you.
great.
Yeah.
Second, the people are so nice. And look, and I don't know if you can fully comprehend it until you go there. So you're going to come out there and be with us in next year in August. People wave at you. Like when you first go there, you think like something's wrong because everybody's waving. You go to the gym, people just walk up to you and start talking to you. You've got your headphones in, right? The universal sign of don't talk to me. People just rock up to you and they're like, hey man, I like that shirt. And you're like, what is going on? What's
I like that.
happening?
It's not here in LA. You won't get that here.
Yeah, no, you
I
just
like
do
this.
your own thing, right? In LA and California, everybody's looking at their phones. They're doing their thing. Nobody cares.
But Indiana's the most beautiful fall weather.
Oh, yeah, down in
fall
Brown
trees,
County,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like it because you could definitely dominate in that market. I mean, for us, we kind of look at LA and downtown as like a little subset, a little pocket, and we're really building our brand in this area and building our network in this area. So,
And now in Indiana, I mean, easy, right? Easy to network connect. Here, I mean, you're up against it, right?
so you're in Indiana, and do you open up your own practice, or are you?
So first out of Costa Rica, I go to California.
Okay.
And because remember I told you I was 24 and I knew everything. I didn't take. There's 2 major. Well, there's 4 parts to get your license as a chiropractor. Part 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, I had not taken part 3 or 4, and I'm now like 8 years after graduating. So now going back and taking these board exams is extremely difficult. So I had to study up to take these tests. And in the meantime, I took a job teaching at a chiropractic college in Hayward, California, Life Chiropractic College West. Then eventually get my license, and I open up our first practice in Dublin, California. So we do a very unique style of chiropractic. So we focus only on the top 2 bones of the neck and the unique relationship between those 2 bones and the brainstem. So probably the easiest example to understand that is Christopher Reeves, right? The actor that played Superman. He fell off his horse and he broke the top bone of his neck. And as a result, he couldn't move his feet, right? And so the nerves that go from your brain pass through the brainstem, pass through that bone, they go everywhere in your body. Stomach
So is this
didn't
like the
work,
most
his heart
impactful
didn't
bone
work.
in the body?
Absolutely. As far as your neurology is concerned, it's kind of like the master control switch. I mean, and you know too, like from martial arts, right? If you can break a man's neck, then they die instantaneously, right? Because you cut off all the communication in the body. So if you understand that if you cut it, you would die, or if you had severe trauma like Christopher Reeves, it would produce, this severe paralysis. What would happen if it was just slightly misaligned, right? And then it starts to interrupt function, and then over time it produces a chronic condition. So
you have hyper focus in just that
yes.
one area. Interesting.
And because of that, though, that's a unique model. Add on top of that we do not accept any type of third-party reimbursement. So it's all cash transactions. We just tell the person what it costs and they pay.
I like that,
right?
Shawn. I like that, baby.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Which is how.
Does anyone else do that in your space?
Well, I mean, yes, but not very many people. It's
people are starting to smarten
unique.
up, and I feel like you're one of the first to do that.
And look, it's happening in medicine too, right? Like doctors are beginning to understand that the way for them to profit is to eliminate the businessmen who have, that don't care about the patient, or the businessmen and women, but the pharmaceutical companies, the insurance companies, all these external people that have their hand in the pot. The relationship should be between the doctor and the patient, right? And so that's the model that we built, basically because that was the model in Costa Rica. That's all I knew. I just knew how to take care of people in this particular way that I had learned, and how to transact with them, and the relationship was between me and them, and that's it. And so other people were like, that's quite unique. How do you do that? And so then, of course, maybe it is. Maybe it's this entrepreneurship or entrepreneurism is built in, because then the next thing was to scale. So we started the process of replicating the model. We initially did licensing, and then now we're full-fledged franchise. We have 16 offices that span from the East Coast in Boston, 2 offices in Hawaii, and everything in between. It doesn't matter if it's a conservative, if it's a blue state, if it's a red state. People understand when it comes to their health and see value. And, look, you guys are young and in great shape. Jeff's working out, not eating a chicken, right?
I'm eating a chicken.
You're eating the chicken.
He's waking up earlier and hitting that gym. I see him. So you're franchising this, and just for some context, and I'm personally curious. Is it brand name, systems, payment methods? Like what exactly do you offer under that?
The whole thing, anything in a franchise, basically plug and play with the business as far as the brand, the look and the feel, website, marketing, systems inside the office, from hiring your staff, the way that we transact on the phone. We were just with Jordan Belfort, right? Like, how important is scripting in a business? Right? Scripting is incredibly important. How often do healthcare providers use scripts? They hate scripts.
They don't.
But you can't scale if you don't have that reproducibility, right? And so all of that, and then training them on that, which is another, piece to try and get doctors to act like business people.
Interesting. What would be one myth that you could share with our audience about franchising? So let's talk a little bit about franchising, because what I think about franchising is it's a little bit different because I'm a business owner, but it seems like a fairly simple, safe investment. And then if you could bring in outside marketing techniques, it seems like a safe investment. Do you think it's a safe investment?
Yeah. Well, what do you mean, a myth on this for the people that want to create a franchise or that want to buy?
Maybe stigmas. Something like, I think the big thing is the operator.
I'm talking about someone. If I wanted to buy a franchise, if I wanted to buy a McDonald's franchise, what would you say? Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. I mean, if you can do it right, and I think there's a lot of different ways that you could slice that pie. Sometimes it's owner operated, and so that means you got to get in there, right? You got to get your hands dirty. A lot of people are looking at a franchise more like as an investment. In our case, owner operated is a given because it's in the healthcare space, and so it's chiropractors opening up a unit, a franchise, and then they're working it, right? And then eventually they're able to scale it themselves, right? So they're able to replicate it. If I have one franchise, I'm able to go and then open a second one, a third one, fourth one. I mean, and that's very common too. If you have non-owner operated units, like pizza, and so you're not actually in there making the pizza, but eventually once you figure out one, you get 50 of them. But the great thing is, yes, you're not thinking about the marketing. It's a done for you system, right? And so, and look, probably a lot of times I think if you're a true entrepreneur, it might be frustrating, right? Because you would look at it maybe and be like, yeah, I think I want to, what if we did it this way?
Yeah, how much flexibility do you offer as far as from a creative element and business strategy?
We in our case, we offer quite a bit of flexibility because it's in the healthcare space, and every person does, we're big believers. Another one of my influences is Michael Port, who wrote Book Yourself Solid. And this book Book Yourself Solid is really aimed at service providers. And the understanding is that you do your best work only with certain people. I mean, look, in interviews, I'm sure that there's been people
like
in
that.
this chair that you guys were like, hopefully not me, where you guys are like,
Nah, you
oh
nice.
man.
He nice. Keep going. Let's go.
But if the person here sucks, it's kind of hard to interview them, right? You know, in the same way as if you're providing a service, if I'm with a patient, but I don't really like that patient, I don't enjoy them, it's hard to do my best work. And so the idea is to surround yourself with your ideal client, AKA the people with whom you do your best work. And so
How do you do that though? As a
So you have to
doctor and a patient.
well, you have to define it.
your customer target, your
and then
persona.
the way that we market, right? And so that's where there has to be some degree of flexibility. Now, some of it's built in. If we're not taking third-party reimbursement, then that means you can't walk into the office, which, by the way, our fees are on the very high side for a chiropractic office. So you have to be of an economic viability or position to be able to even be in the office in the first place. There's a lot of offices that do, free initial exams or almost give away the initial exam just to get people in. That's not what we do.
No freebies with Uncle Shawn. None.
Yeah, no freebies here. But what that does is it sets the bar and says to the world, look, if you're coming in here, then you have to have at least the economic ability to pay.
So
right?
it's the same persona, the same customer target for all of your franchisees.
Well, from an economic standpoint, but then we could say some of them prefer working more with like athletes. Others of them work with children,
subsets
right?
within
So
it,
it's
but
the
the same-
subset, yeah. So they are able to control the subset, and then we have the overriding parameters that kind of dictate the way they operate. But those dictates also will affect their ability to service certain people. But at the same time, because look, a lot of people get into healthcare and any healthcare space because they want to serve, and that actually creates this sort of the schizophrenic business life, right? Because on one side, you want to serve everybody. You see someone who's homeless on the street, and your heart goes out to them, and you're like, I want to help them. But you really wish that people would pay you because you see other people that are, living a great lifestyle, and you want that. And you have to reconcile that. Like, that is so hard for service providers to reconcile. So what they end up doing is they want to give it away, right? They just want to give everything away because it's their big heart. Somewhere along the line, we have to make it okay. And actually, we have to have an understanding that you have to have money in order to be able to serve the world, right? You have to have money in order to provide a service. So what we do is a portion of every single office visit that we do in the franchise goes towards a not-for-profit foundation, and that foundation provides chiropractic care in countries like Mexico, El Salvador, and Philippines for free. And our doctors volunteer their time. So yes, 1 week out of the year, they're able to go into a third world country, provide care absolutely free, and it's funded by the people of their community that actually had the money to make that happen, right?
Question for you, because I have a lot of we do give back, and we want to give back more. When I talk to a lot of wealthy people, they always say make your money first and then give back. Did you start doing this when you had a little bit of success, or you start this early? Because ultimately something like that, it's also a great marketing and storytelling play. Like that, I felt that in my heart when you said that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Did you do that early or late?
Early, but it goes back to that same thing because I'm a service provider, right? I mean, if I think most people that are passionate about their service, and I already know this about Jeff, he'd give it away if he could. Because you want it to get out there.
I ain't letting him give away shit.
And that's why that balance, right? Because you have the service hand, you have the business hand, right? So for me, I'm coming more from that creative space. Initially, I would give it away if I could. I've had to learn that that's not serving humanity just to give it away, right? It's actually devaluing. It's not helping people to understand the bigger picture. And so thankfully, I've been able to be exposed to mentors and people that have taught me how, and actually the more you have, so I gave it away early, but my ability to give is greater now that I have. You can't give what you don't have.
Mentors. I want to talk about mentors. I want to talk about books because it seems like that you're a big reader. So usually we do kind of like a Mount Rushmore type thing. I want you to go 5 different people, different attributes in relation to them. So
As some mentors.
Mentors. Let's start with that. Mentors.
Well, I mean, I'm going to go super cliche on the first one, but I mean, absolutely true. And I'll just put them in the first box. But obviously, my parents. I'm a big believer that your life skills that you leverage and use throughout life, you mostly accumulate between birth and 5 to 6 years old. And looking at, and that's why that stuff is so important to me. Like when you were young, when you were in elementary school, what did you think about your parents? Also looking at the relationship, and it's difficult in today's world where there's so many fractured marriages, but you get your empathy from the parent of the opposite sex, right? And so that's why I would say for both of them, great role models. But I really think that when I was young, they planted into me these thoughts. Right. Even I would even say as far as like, and if we're going to go books, there's a book that's called The Way We Love. And what it talks about, like, loving somebody is a learned behavior. Like, well, where did you learn it? Well, you learned it from your parents. And so I just super value kind of my upbringing from birth until about 6 years old. And that was basically when we left Japan. That was kind of like the mark where, like, all right, so now I have the tools that are going to show up. 40 years later, they're going to show up somewhere. And so I would say them. Next.
Shout out mom and dad.
Yeah. Next, I would say right now, Jay Abraham, massive mentor for me. Really love looking at the way that he navigates his strategy. And that's another thing. I think that, that's such a buzzword that's thrown around everywhere. I don't know that people truly understand strategy. You're going to say, oh, strategy versus tactics. But to be strategic in your business thinking, that's Jay Abraham, right? That's on a different level. It's almost like having a philosophical conversation, right? It's kind of like, you're like, what are we talking about? We're
Psychology.
talking strategy. Yeah. Psychology, the way people think, but the way we think, and then the way our prospects and our buyers think, and then the way that our human resource, the people that work with us, and they think, and the way that we interact with all of those things. And it's very just sort of philosophical. It's like something's not tangible, and the world is full of all of these tangible things. This is how you hire, this is how you fire, then here's your employee handbook. That's not strategic. So I super value that. And Jay, really one of the biggest attributes, taught me relationships in business, collaborative relationships. Thankfully through our time with Jay, we've been able to leverage into multiple other verticals. That's another one of his big principles, right? So getting into other verticals. I remember our very first year with Jay, he sat down with us. What great advice. And he said, I want you to either start or acquire one business every year that's related to your core business, but that's in another vertical. My wife, Lacey, she thought that he said 2. And so 1 year later, we came back and she was like, we did it. We've got 2 businesses, but we're going crazy. And he was like, why'd you do that? She said, because you said that. And he said, no, I said 1. I said 1, but that's been very good for us. Second, I would say Michael Port, who I mentioned earlier, Book Yourself Solid.
Before you go on, just for some context, guy, Jay Abraham is one of the highest paying consultants in the world. He's a marketer. He's known for preeminence, which is basically positioning yourself as the authority in the space, something that you have done obviously very well. And then really big at mixing and matching tactics from different industries, which we have done, I think, very well, as of you. So on to the next. But Jay is an older guy, worked with guys like Damon John and Tony Robbins. I personally have learned a lot from him. There's a lot of stuff on him out there on the internet. I highly recommend listening and watching that stuff. But continue.
Absolutely. Michael Port, author of Book Yourself Solid. He does a program now called Heroic Public Speaking. He's now training people how to do public speaking.
Who is this guy? I never even heard of him.
He started out as an actor. He's out of New York. He lives in Pennsylvania. His book, Book Yourself Solid, is a New York Times bestselling book. It's older. So I worked with him right when I came back to the United States. Guys, I don't know, that would have been over 10 years ago. And now he's doing Heroic Public Speaking. You see him around in some circles. I think he kind of took a little bit of a break from the sort of the entrepreneur circles, but now he's kind of breaking back in with Heroic Public Speaking. He really helped us, both Lacey and I, a ton with our speaking. Basically looking at your speaking from the viewpoint of doing like theater. Understanding blocking, the speakers that just pace back and forth and making your points and anchoring them to certain areas. Creating basically what amounts to your script, having a run through and going through, understanding tonality, which for sales is so important. How you leverage your voice, how to make a point. The sort of the modern day version of that would be Roger Love, right out here in LA. He's helping a lot of people. He works with a lot of the singers. He worked with what was the guy that sang with Lady Gaga recently? He did
Bradley Cooper. You mean?
Bradley Cooper, Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix. Like he preps those actors and turns them into singers. But
This is a book I need to read because we don't even have a name to this podcast yet, and we don't really prep. It's kind of off the cuff. And for me, I always internally kind of have like, you know, the linchpins of my story. Like there's the high school, there's the freshman year, there's the senior. I go down in the dumps, I go into debt, and then there's Melon, and there's Ikonick. That's all I really have, but I'm very interested to read this book. I'm going to put that, guys, down in the bio to read that book.
What's your biggest advice for public speaking? Because I, as a kid, I was literally the most terrified kid to get up in front of the class. I would literally avoid it at all costs, and I would even stay home.
Well, and it's to understand that it's a show. It's a performance. And I think that's where people get messed up because they're like, I have to do a speech. Like I have to, and this, you know, that's super popular right now. Todd Herman's book, Alter Ego Effect. It's not you. So it's like I get to go up on this stage, and it doesn't matter. Like I just play the character, and the character there's a script, and there's a way that you dress. There's what if I had to just go up there as myself and make it up, it probably wouldn't be that good. I'd be nervous and it'd be a mess. But if you understand, like I'm playing the role of this person that came here to deliver this message, it's way easier.
See,
right?
that's interesting because that's the opposite for me. Because I have to actually know what I'm talking about, and the more I am myself, the easier it is for me.
Yeah,
to
but
speak.
that's more panel driven stuff. He's talking about a very planned.
Like a keynote.
Yeah. You're talking about a keynote.
Like a keynote.
Yeah. Keynotes are a whole different beast.
But here's a great thing that
keynotes
if you haven't read that Todd's book, The Alter Ego Effect, what a great point that everybody is playing an alter ego, 100%. And that there is no such thing as your true authentic self. Like
you have your digital self, you have your human self, and then you have the salesman.
Yeah. And you might have 30 others, right? You might have your husband self. You might have your with the boys self. You've got your, like all these things, right? Playing golf self. You got your sports. Like
even when you're by yourself, you're making up how you want to be perceived to your own self.
You're priming yourself to how you want to be.
And
I think on this podcast, that's the one big thing with me and Jeff is some of my girlfriends actually on Instagram, they say I'm very like robotic. I'm very, entrepreneurial. And
on the podcast?
No, they're saying that on my Instagram I'm very robotic and pre-plans and like.
Oh yeah, because like views. You go.
Shut up.
You're terrible. Yeah, he needs to work on that. Yeah, sure.
What are you talking about? I changed that, bro. Relax over there. But
he needs to work
very
on his
robotic,
Instagram
and it's
stories.
like it's so funny because like I just was with one of these girls, and she was like, "Yeah, like, do you like drink and go out?" And I'm over here like I could like funnel that whole bottle of tequila. Like I'm a fucking animal. You know what I'm saying? So. That's the one thing with this podcast is that, me and Jeff, obviously you can tell we're like brothers. We're bickering back and forth. We're like really excited to kind of show like who we are and ultimately be ourselves, but then, get the value from people like you. So keep going because you're dropping so many gems right now. Who's another person and or book you could recommend?
All right, so we did parents, we did Jay Abraham, we did Michael Port, right? That's where we're at so far. I'm going to go chiropractic on number 4. A doctor named Dr. Sid Williams. During my formative time in chiropractic, he was the one on the cutting edge. He formed this school in Atlanta. I would drive from St. Louis to Atlanta 4 times a year. He put on this seminar. Everybody just wanted to hear him. Great piece. It's on 60 Minutes. He was the one who began to instill in me. And this would be interesting, and I don't know if my chiropractic crew is going to see the podcast. If they do, this is where I'm going to get the heat because I learned from him that it was okay to be successful. I learned from him that financial abundance was okay. And a lot of people, when they heard him speak, they heard something different, right? So they thought that he was preaching, just serve. His catchphrase was give, love, and serve out of your own abundance. But what I heard was out of your own abundance, which meant that you can't give
love and
what
serve
you don't have until you have it. Mm-hmm. And so the goal was to go out and get it, and he had done that, right? So as a role model too, he was ultra successful. He was someone to look up to, we're talking in the 90s and, the Armani suit time and the bling jewelry and everybody around him was doing really well financially. And so he made a massive impact on so many chiropractors. He has sort of this cult following now after his death. I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily attribute me in that world, but he was definitely super, super important, right? Inside of that. And then I'm going to stay in the chiropractic realm because I'm going to go then historical for number 5. The developer of chiropractic, B.J. Palmer, And likewise, one, this technique that we do today, that was a technique that he developed that looks at the top two bones of the neck. He was a prolific writer, and he wrote and documented a lot of stuff. So I've read, there's sort of a thing of collecting these original writings of his. And so I collect those and read most of the stuff that he's put out, super student of his. But here's the other thing is he was probably this is all happening in Davenport, Iowa, of all things. And if he were alive today, he would be on the podcast. He would be on, he would be hanging out with Gary Vee. He would be hanging out with Grant Cardone and these people because he was a business person. He had the first radio station there in Davenport. He wanted to broadcast. He was into communication, which means he was into marketing. He had his own printing press. He was putting out all of the stuff. And, he lived through the Great Depression. And by most estimates, when he dies in 1961, he has accumulated a net worth of around $60 million, which is pretty
nice
substantial.
for that, yeah.
Then for someone that most people in this world don't even know existed, right? And so the idea, too, for me, that you can be successful doing something that you're passionate about and serving humanity, that you don't have to be selling a widget or and I have friends that have made tons of money in e-commerce and that's very admirable. But for me, when you're selling something like that you're passionate about, that's making an impact on the world, you don't have to give it away and you don't have to be broke to be making an impact. I think the Mother Teresa thing hurts us a little bit, right? And she wasn't broke either, by the way.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep going down the path. Failures. Let's talk about failures. That's something that we always dive into here. Biggest failure in life. I want you to go fucking low.
Biggest failure in life.
I want you to go low. I was at negative 31,000.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to put it in two realms of that. So one, relationship. So Lacey is my second wife. So going through a divorce, never fun, never something that people are super proud of, but massive failure, right? Because nobody gets married planning on having a divorce, right? And so the sheer fact that you at one point had in your mind the illusion that this was going to be a relationship that would be eternal, and you couldn't figure out how to navigate that with this one you didn't have to navigate a team of 300. Yeah. You had to navigate one person, and you couldn't figure that out. That's like a pretty big failure to me.
Okay, this is another attribute that I think goes down to entrepreneurship and the competitiveness, because you probably internally were like, you could figure out any business problem, you could figure out anything, and you're like, what the fuck, I can't figure this out. Is that what you were thinking in your head?
Yeah, but this is a Michael Port quote, is that most business problems are personal problems in disguise.
Ooh, he's dropping these gems right now. I like that
that's
one.
great. So if you have, if you have problems, if you have a problem in your relationship at home, what do you think that your relationship with your employees looks like, or your relationship with your customers looks like? If you think that you have problems at home, but my work peeps love me, you're fooling yourself. Because if you don't know how to navigate the primary relationships in your life, you don't know how to navigate the secondary relationship. And then it shows up, and then they're like, oh man, all my employees, they suck. They keep quitting. I can't find good help. Yeah, but it's you. You don't know how to navigate relationships. Let's look at your relationships outside of your work, and I think that you'll discover what's going on. My business is going terrible. I don't know but it's you. You have mindset issues or money relationship issues over here, and they're showing up in your business, and it's easy to see them show up in your business. It's harder to look in the mirror and face the reality of what's going on in your personal life. It's easy to talk about your business. That's why I said, well, if we're going to go to like biggest failure, I could, yes, I've messed up in my business a ton. And it's easy to say that. Like, remember when we did this and it didn't work out. But when you're talking about relationship, family, siblings, relationships that have gone wrong that you really cared about, that really hurt you and hurt other people, I think that's harder for people to talk about.
Well, thank you for talking about that. I see where you're coming from there as far as the competitiveness goes. Okay, so Black Diamond Club, I want to talk about that. So you've developed a nice chiropractic business. You've expanded different franchisees, and now this Black Diamond Club, it seems like it's just everything that you've learned from the mentors, the reading, and your personal experiences, you're now giving back to people. So explain a little bit about what that is, because for me, I've never been one. I'm a big reader and networker, but I've never actually paid for a group or paid to go to a conference or anything. And I'm super excited to go to yours and see what that's like. But it seems like you're someone that obviously you offer that service and then you go to these things and you've had great value. So why don't you talk a little bit about what that is? And I just want to talk about overall experiences in doing those type of things.
Yeah, let's start with the overall experience first. Great book that's called Pendulum by Roy Williams. And just the other day, Tucker Max was talking about Roy Williams and some of his
Tucker
his
Max,
stuff.
the Tucker Max.
Yeah.
Wow, that guy's still around?
Oh, yeah. So Tucker's a great friend of ours. He was instrumental in helping us with our book through Scribe Media. I saw Dave Goggins' book there. The Scribe did Dave's book.
So he used to be super controversial. Is he still controversial?
No.
I gotta check this guy out.
And that's like alter ego, right? Because I think that he did that in an effort to make a point, right? It's not. I mean, and every time that I've hung out with Tucker, that's not who he's a super nice guy.
Maybe he was a fuckboy maybe early in his life, and now he's transitioned into a real adult.
Yeah, he definitely has transitioned to a real adult. Super intelligent, super smart. Always just gives amazing and wonderful insights, and understands the book world inside and out. I always say if you want to write a book and you're serious about leveraging your book to make an impact and help to grow your business, Scribe Media. That's where I would go. What was I talking about?
Yeah, so paying for courses, going to conferences.
But he was talking about Roy Williams and Pendulum.
Yeah.
And so Pendulum talks about how, and they trace back through the history of time that there are these pendular swings that go in these 20-year intervals. And it's pretty creepy, like how accurate it is. And the pendulum swings signify a movement from a me-oriented society to a we-oriented society. Now, the pinnacle of the me-oriented society, the last pinnacle was 1983. So what do you see in 1983? Popular artists are like Michael Jackson, right? And you want to stand out. You're wearing the red leather, the one white glove. You have Madonna, and she's talking about we're living in a material world. I'm a material girl. It's about how I stand out. Then we have a 20-year swing down to 2003. And so, and it's not like it just switches on a dime. So
it gradually?
It gradually moves. And in that lower part, when we're in that transition, that's when you see the birth of things like Facebook and Google and these, right? So then the internet age starts to kick in. And then we have a 20-year swing up to 2023. And not like I'm super predictive, but if people were to ask me, like, well, what do you think about social media? Well, look, it's 2019 going into 2020. It has at least another 3 years strong run in it.
Of the we?
Yes, of the we. We're 3 years away from the pinnacle of the we. Which, by the way, this is why.
Good, I like that. I like that for us.
Right, and this is why in today's world, something can happen in Florida. You know, there's a shooting in Florida, and people in Los Angeles are going to change their profile picture to support people that they don't know. Now, in 1983, never. We don't care.
So this cyclical thing that's going on here, the variables is just anything going on in pop culture?
Yes. In fact, pop culture is what moves it a lot. So the literary world, books, and music start to move that dial. And then now we have the internet influencers, right? And you guys deal a lot in the influencers. So influencers move that. Usually people will show up. And so probably in the next 3 years, people start to show up that begin to move that needle back down, back towards the, but look, it's 3 years to the pinnacle and 20-year ride down. So 23 years that we're still really talking about this sort of collective. But that then from a business perspective says that people don't necessarily want to buy from me or from Lacey. They want to be a part of it. Right? So that's why, even like when you say like Ikonick, what is Ikonick? Well, it's a culture. You're engaging in Ikonick because you want to be a part of it.
Community.
Not just because I want the piece, right? Because what it represents, people then, you know, in our house we have several pieces, and people see that, or if they see it on a video clip, they're like, oh, Ikonick. And what it does is it says, yes, we belong. To a large extent, doing something like this, what it does is it signals for both parties, oh, we belong, right? That's what we're communicating to the world.
This is a non-paid for ad.
The non-paid for ad, right? But this is then in marketing, and so in Black Diamond Club, what we've realized is that the people out there have a desire, not necessarily just to hear from me, but to be a part of something. They want to know that other practitioners that practice something completely different in Oklahoma are going through the same thing. Not necessarily because that other person fixes it, but because it gives me this feeling that we're all interconnected. And we're interconnected by our successes and by our failures as well. I think, too, that's something that really marks what we do, is that we hyper celebrate our successes. Because when you win, we win, right? And that if we're a community and we're actually linked together, then of course I'm going to celebrate your win, because I also know that your win marks the coming of mine, right? Because we are interconnected. And I think showing other people, and that's the value of community. If I only was in my house and I was, and probably as entrepreneurs, you both have had this thought at some time in your life, like, I wonder if this is going to work. Well, what if I could show you other people that were just like you, that it was working for, and that you identified with, and maybe not in your space. That was one thing, too, I see now that, like, if I say anything iconic, now I get all the fake iconic, right?
Call those the copycats. What's up, guys?
So not that. Not
Shout out
people,
copycats.
not people ripping you off,
Yeah.
but people doing something similar.
They don't have the
inspiration.
community, though. That's where it differentiates. I'm really not looking to 2043 now.
Yeah.
Things are looking fucking gloomy. So let's talk about the piece. So let's turn around and talk about the piece.
Yeah.
Interesting choice.
He picked the big one. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed you picked this, but I feel like you might take this.
Well, I get
into
now after we had the podcast. Now I
It
understand.
does make
why.
sense. You
Yeah.
are right, young Jeffrey.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, so I have a similar piece. That was like my first iconic piece, was the gold one, right? The
Gold standard,
the
yeah.
gold, yeah. And I love this because I think that one of the things for me is to be bold enough to say that it's super cool to make a lot of money. Not just because you're trying to make a lot
Love
of
that
money
shit.
and
Say it
just
louder.
have it,
Yeah.
but so that you have the ability to give. And you might be giving to your kids, college education, like that. You want to be able to provide, and you can't provide unless you have. I love reminders, to me, that it's cool to do that. Second thing is we have our, Jay teaches this. You should have your own lexicon. And so we say these things that might not make a lot of sense, but we say all the time, respect the money. And this also, for me, reminds me of, a lot of people would have, and I'm sure in your house you have like a picture of your significant other, your family, right? Because it reminds you wake up and you get ready. I think that it is super important that you are constantly in a great relationship with your money. So that means that I don't have my wallet on me, but that means that I'm big into having a nice wallet. I want my money to be organized. Like, I wouldn't take my wife and just throw her to the side. So I wouldn't take my money and just have it balled up, right? Yeah. This is something too we teach. You should be in constant communication with your money. Like, wouldn't it be weird if I went, to Brazil for 2 weeks and I told you, like, yeah, when I was in Brazil, it was great. I didn't talk to Lacey once. You'd be like, that's kind of weird. Mm-hmm. Like, if I go to Brazil and we're apart, we would communicate. So I teach people that you should check in with your money all the time. And here's the thing is the universe sends you clues. I was once in Boston walking down the street with my buddy, and hopefully every listener starts. And if you do this, message me, DM me, show me.
We can make this a little snippet and throw some traffic behind it. So the floor is yours. Let's go.
Yeah,
baby.
Show me the pictures of this. I was in Boston with my buddy, and we were walking down the street downtown, and I saw a penny, and I was like, oh look, there's a penny, and he just walked up to it, and he walked past, and he goes, I don't need a penny. And I kind of got a couple steps past it, and I was like, I got to go back. And so I went and I picked the penny up, because here's the thing is the universe sends us signs. And everybody's like wanting more. We have this innate desire, like I want more. And then then the universe sent me a penny. And then if I walk past it, I'm afraid that I'm sending a message to the universe that I'm good. And if it's not going to send me a penny or a dime it's not going to send me $100 bill or thousands, or your Stripe account's not going to read 25,000, because to the universe I'm sending mixed messages that I'm actually good. I mean, one of the best places to find coins is in TSA. So when we travel, there's coins all over the place, and I pick them up. I'm not afraid to pick those coins up, because I'm like, wow, free money. You know what? I think that we're actually conditioned to be poor. So first of all, what people post, people send me pictures of just coins. Like, look what I found. And I'm like, how cool is that? It's just free money. The other thing is we're conditioned to resist money. Have you ever been at a lunch meeting or a dinner meeting where someone's like, hey, let me get the check? And we're conditioned to say what?
No, I got it.
And how crazy is that? If somebody
Fuck it, I'm not picking up
you,
the check the next 10 times.
If somebody
Let's
offers
go.
you say yes. Like, I say, wow, free dinner? This is amazing. But all that does is enable me to pick up the check for someone else. But we think about all of the mixed messages that we put out to the world that we're good. Oh, I don't need any more. And so this is why I love the piece. I love to look at this and be like, wow, signs of abundance are all around me. And I need to just clue in on those and be open to it. If I'm not open to it, it's not going to come. So I'm down for free lunches and dinners and for nickels and pennies. I don't care how it comes to me, because that's the precursor. That's the stepping stone to that, that nightly Stripe email that's right. You got to see email. You got to see
those Shopify guys out there. You get that deposit from Stripe. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
So have you instilled this in your daughter?
Yeah. In them and we to give you that one too, but also in the people in Black Diamond Club. Yeah. Here's super controversial. When my daughters were young, I was working hard, and I have this thing, and you have the pieces, but I have this thing that we've glorified in the entrepreneurship world, the grind and the hustle. And I think, like, man, that grind sounds terrible to me. Like, I don't want to rise and grind. It doesn't sound like I want to rise and
that piece doesn't do well anyway.
But I just want to wake up and have fun, right? Yeah. Like, I think the word grind, and so we have these shirts that say there's no glory in the grind, and there's nothing wrong with you making a ton of money and me looking at you and saying, and people probably have to say this about the two of you, like, what, you guys don't work? Like, I wish I had your life, right? Like, yeah, but that's what we're trying to create, right? Mm-hmm. So when I was young and my daughters were super young, I was in the grind, right? And I didn't understand that. And so I was constantly working on my business. So I missed, the school play and the talent show and all of that.
A lot of times grind means playing.
And if it does, then that's fine, right?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes the connotation of it, right?
The happiness is not aligned with grind. Grind is, miserable at the desk and the
daily grind.
Yeah. No, for
So,
me, as I've gotten older, happiness is just, we fucking love what we're doing. We love grinding, but it's stuff that we love.
Yeah. So what do you think about that quote? Because we came out with a piece recently that says money doesn't buy happiness, and it's a $100 bill ripped in half and being put together by a smiley face, and it's a collab with Smiley. What do you think about that quote?
That money doesn't buy happiness? Yeah. Well, it on the surface, and if we're going to be absolutely literal, it's absolutely true, right? Because if you have $1 million, there's nothing that you could buy that will make you happy. However, if we were to just look experientially at people that have money are happier than the people who are, and if we go to the two extremes, so if you don't have a place to sleep tonight, how happy are you? Right, and you could make an argument like, wow, they're probably happy, but I mean, I've not seen a lot of happy homeless people, right? Like trying to figure their way out from the depths, and that's what you're talking about, like the failures, right? And it's that famous quote, like I've been rich and I've been poor.
Choose rich
every time. Yeah. It's that same thing. So yeah, philosophically yes, but.
I think that if you accumulate wealth, outside of it, getting it from rich parents or winning the lottery, to get that wealth, you had to put in the work and do something that you were super passionate about. So you've probably taken a life path and a life journey that's, you're happy about.
Absolutely.
So that's my personal opinion.
But the one thing with the kids, so I missed a ton of their stuff when they were little, and now, so both of them went to college. We paid for their college. They didn't have to take out loans. They could go to any college that they wanted to. And one year for Thanksgiving, we had flown over to Australia. We were having Thanksgiving dinner in Australia. We don't even celebrate Thanksgiving in Australia. We went to this restaurant. We're having our dinner. And I had asked them, this was just a couple of years ago, I had asked them, I said, when you were young, I missed a lot of your events and things. Did I make a mistake? Like, should I have been at those?
I'm listening right now. Go.
And they said, we didn't even know. Like, you don't know if your dad was at your second grade talent show. And they said, but this life that we now have, right, we can appreciate that with where we are in our lives. Like, thankfully, like, we didn't have to pay for our school. I could have maybe, and who knows, it's hypothetical, but gone to all of the things and
then didn't have the money to,
and they went to community college, and then their lives would be completely different.
That is such an interesting perspective.
No, it's interesting you say that, because like when I think of when I was a kid, it's like you're almost not even fully developed, so you're not even like thinking like that. And it's when you get to this age where, I don't know what age, maybe 18, you kind of
back.
These stupid fucking movies. You got the movies where it's like the fourth grade parent teacher conference and the kid's crying because his broke fucking dad isn't there. That's fucked. You don't even
Yeah,
fucking
but
know what's
no.
going on in 4th grade. Fuck that.
Yeah,
I
but-
like this.
Yeah,
That's an interesting perspective, and I agree to it. Now I'm going back. I'm like, yeah, I really don't even remember. I
don't remember shit.
Yeah, I'm just like worried about something else. I'm not worried about if my dad's there or my
Right.
mom's there or something. But
who took you?
Yeah.
But later on, and this is
Later
this
on,
is-
yeah.
When my oldest daughter was in undergrad, she literally would text us every day, and I would tell people, like, as a father, like, that to me is more valuable than having gone to to have a relationship
impressive that
with
she's
your
texting you every
adult.
day.
Yeah, and to have
I
a
was on
relationship
a
with an
bender.
adult
I wasn't
daughter.
talking to my parents for a long time in college. Love you, mom and dad. But they didn't know if I was alive. Okay.
Yeah.
So, guys, amazing insight. I want to open up the floor to you last time to just talk to the camera. A lot of our family are entrepreneurs. So what's the best piece of advice you would give to a young entrepreneur? I know you could probably go on for years. Let's just give one piece of advice for someone young, aspiring, and just starting to go on their journey as an entrepreneur.
Well, definitely, I would say to, first of all, connect with your passion. We had talked a lot about that. If you're doing something that you don't love, you've got to switch that up right away. Secondarily to that, let's figure out how to monetize that. But let's have the right mindset. We're not doing it just to get as much money as possible. We're doing it so that you can have the lifestyle that you deserve. And I think that's super important too, right? Every single person out there deserves, if you're providing value to the world, deserves to be paid according to the value that you're delivering to the world.
Gems. And where can they find you on Instagram? Instagram, website, everywhere.
Instagram is at Dr. Shawn Dill, at Dr. Shawn Dill. Website, www.shawndill.com. That's SHAWN. And if you're a service provider, come join us at www.blackdiamondclub.com. And if you want to see Mark on stage, www.cometosummercamp.com, August 7th and 8th in Indianapolis. We've got Eric Thomas. Ooh. We've got Jordan Belfort. We've got you. We've got Connor Blakely. Ooh. We've got some more people that we roll. We piece it out.
Shit.
Yeah,
Let's
it's gonna
go,
be
dude.
awesome.
Thank you so much. It was an amazing episode.
Yeah, man.
My bad.
Yeah.